Hey Book Dragons, welcome back. I've got a book review for you today. Let's get right to it. So I recently finished reading The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. And this is such a charming book, guys. I had a phenomenal time reading it. It's just such a cozy read. You know, I felt like I could be sitting there wrapped up in my blanket in front of a crackling fire with a nice glass of wine that I can be sipping while I'm reading this book. It's just it evokes that kind of atmosphere that just is such a feel-good book. And one of the things that makes this book really charming is the characters, and the cast of characters is just phenomenally written. And you know me, I'm a character-driven reader, so I'm just thoroughly immersed in it the whole time because of how wonderful the characters are. So I'll tell you a little bit about the story, and then we'll get into some of the specifics about it. The story starts off with Linus Baker. He is a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth, and he is called by extremely upper management to come and talk with them, which is highly unusual because nobody ever meets extremely upper management. But the extremely upper management has heard so many good things about Linus. I'm assuming, although we're not really told, but I'm assuming from his track record as a caseworker and probably a lot of the really good feedback that they get from a lot of the orphanages that Linus has worked at. So they call him because they've got a really special case. There is a orphanage on a faraway island, Marcius Island, and there are some extremely unique cases at this orphanage. One person in particular they want him to keep an eye on, and so they assign him to this school. They give him this big file folder which surprisingly doesn't have a lot of information on the kids or the headmaster of the orphanage. There's just not really a whole lot of information on all of them, and it's kind of one of those things you have to experience for yourself, right? So Linus is just this, he's kind of henpecked, and I'm not talking about a henpecked husband here. He's a henpecked employee. He's got this extremely overbearing boss whose assistant walks around with a clipboard the whole time and just marks off demerits left and right for little things all the way up to the really big, super important things. He's just one of those annoying assistants that's just like, well, I'm better than you, and you get a demerit for this, and you get a demerit for this. Just, oh God, I wanted to punch the guy. But, and I'm sure Linus did too. But, you know, he's one of those, he just kind of sticks out, Linus does. He doesn't really fit in necessarily. He just comes to work, does his job, and then goes home to his quiet little house with his record player and listens to music while he pets his cat. It's just a really unique life. You know, his neighbors are always like annoying him, and so he's looking forward to actually kind of getting away from everything for a little bit and going to this island. He's never seen the sea before, so as he approaches the island, he gets to see the sea for the first time, and just, you know, I can relate to that because when I saw the ocean, I'm just like, oh my goodness, I don't want to be anywhere else. So Linus is just an extremely endearing character. The headmaster of the school is a man named Arthur Parnassus. He's this kind of awkward extremely tall, gangly guy who dresses in these kind of off-putting outfits, and he's just kind of this odd fellow that doesn't really seem to fit in either. And then you've got the kids. Now, the kids are very unique, especially one, and that would be Lucy, and I'll get to Lucy in a few minutes. But before we talk about Lucy, I want to talk about some of the other kids. And I'll tell you what, all of the kids are extremely, extremely endearing. There's Theodore, who is a wyvern. He's, he's a small dragon-like creature, and he's pretty much the only one of his kind left. There's Chauncey, who is kind of this blob-like character. He has two gangly eyes on top of his head, and nobody really knows what species he is. There's Talia, who's a gnome, and Talia's amazing. She's one of my favorite characters, and she's super into gardening, which makes sense because she's a gnome, and it's extremely funny how many times she threatens to bury Linus in her garden. Just the dark humor in this book is so amazing, and it's a very sarcastic humor, and Linus is kind of put off at first. He doesn't know what to think about the humor of these kids, because I kind of liken it to My Big Fat Greek Wedding, where they keep telling Thomas, we're gonna kill you, and he thinks probably they are joking, but he's not really sure. It's that kind of humor that they keep making these jokes about what they're gonna do to Linus, but he's not really sure if they're joking or not, even though they probably are. And Talia is one of those. She's a big instigator of that. Fee is a forest sprite, so she can make things grow, and she's just kind of learning to come into her power. There's Zoe Chapelwhite, who is the owner of the island. She's also a sprite, and she kind of helps take care of the kids at the orphanage. So you've got all these really amazing characters, and one in particular is Lucy. Lucy is not a girl. Lucy is a boy, and Lucy is short for Lucifer. And I want to read to you this quote from the book, and it's just this had me dying. So it's talking about Linus's religious background and everything like that. And there's a point where it says, so no, Linus hadn't been of the religious sort at all. Granted, that was before he knew the Antichrist was a 6-year-old on Marsyas Island. For the first time in his life, Linus wished he had a crucifix or a Bible or something with which to protect himself should Lucy decide he needed to sacrifice someone in order to come into his full powers. And it's just so off the wall. It's just so funny. That was before he knew the Antichrist was a 6-year-old on Marsyas Island. So yes, Lucy is the Antichrist. Lucy is the son of Satan, but he's just a 6-year-old kid, and he makes, just like Talia, he makes all of these jokes about what he's going to do and how he's going to take over the world and how he's going to destroy it, and every once in a while he'll channel his evil powers. But then he's just this sweet kid who's well-meaning and just wants to get along with everybody. It's so amazing that the wide range of personalities that you find among the kids, and I just had a blast reading it. And what's really cool, as Linus begins to stay there, he's there for a month on assignment, and as he begins to learn about these kids, he really begins to soften. He's always been this really by the book guy. He follows all the rules and regulations of the department in charge of magical youth, But as he grows to understand and know these kids, he starts forming bonds with them, which he's technically not supposed to do, but he does anyway, and it's really beautiful. One kid in particular, his name is Sal. He's new to the orphanage, and he's been in 14 other orphanages, and he's been abused and mistreated and just horrifically terrorized by the different places he's been, to the point that he just is so afraid and doesn't trust anyone, let alone Linus, at first. So this is a beautiful story about learning to overcome prejudices and learning to accept people who are different despite our preconceived notions of what the world is like and what the people in the world should be like. You know, most people in the world, including the people of the town that borders the island of Marsyas, would reject these kids outright. Just you know, see them as little terrors and freaks of nature, and they should be gotten rid of, and you know, especially the Antichrist, right? Especially Lucy is just dangerous and should never be allowed to exist. At least that's what they think. And you may be watching this and say, well, obviously the Antichrist should be... No. This book puts a whole different spin on that. You've just got this 6-year-old kid who, yes, has the potential to end the world, but there is so much more to Lucy than meets the eye. And so during Linus's time at this orphanage, he just gets to learn about these characters and go on adventures with them, and, you know, have dinners with them and listen to music with them, and go on expeditions into town with them. And, you know, just it's just so amazing. And you know that show Kids Say the Darndest Things? That is so true in this book. Some of the things that come out of these kids' mouths, and at first it's annoying to Linus, and he's like, oh, well, I can't tolerate things like that. But then as he grows and he softens toward the kids, he starts to be amused by it, and he starts to expect it, and he starts to appreciate the simple things that come out of the mouths of these kids. And it's just absolutely amazing. And he's really there to evaluate whether or not this orphanage needs to close its doors or needs to continue to exist. And I won't tell you what he decides. I want you to read the book and find it out for yourself. But specifically, he's also there to evaluate Arthur Parnassus. Arthur Parnassus is a very unique individual, a very unconventional administrator, and he has these kids there in his mind to love on them and give them a safe place to exist, compared to the other places out there that tend to terrorize their kind and look down on them. And despite laws that have been passed to allow magical youth to safely exist, the world in reality is not like that. And so it's just amazing. I want to read, there was another quote that I really, really liked here from the book. Home is where you feel like yourself, Mrs. Chapel-White said. And Linus could only agree. It's the same for us, isn't it, children? Home is where we get to be who we are. And that is really the crux of this story, and the crux of the reason why this orphanage exists. And it's just a really special place and a really, really special story. This is easily going to make my top books list for the year. I just had a phenomenal time reading it. There is some romance, LGBTQ romance to be exact, and I thought it was really awesome the way it was woven in. The romance is not the main plot, it's more of a side item, but it's there and it's really beautiful, and it doesn't take away from the plot at all. So I just thought it was beautifully done. This book is just magical. It really is. I am so glad I read it. I would totally read it again, and I think you should read it too. So I really hope you do. Let me know in the comments if you have read this book. I've seen it a lot on BookTube, so I know it's pretty popular. But if you've read this book, let me know your thoughts in the comments. If you've been on the fence about this book, let me know that too. Maybe you've now decided that you're going to read the book, and I hope that's the case. Maybe it's not for everyone, but I thought it was just so heartwarming. There were so many times that I just laughed out loud. There were so many times that I cried. So many emotions racked me during my time reading this book, and it just made me so happy. So, yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about it, anything negative at all. So, yeah, there you go, folks. The House in the Cerulean Sea. Pick it up, read it, enjoy it, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. That's all I have to say. Make sure that you are reading more books, and I will see you in the next video.